We'll start the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. I guess we'll start with you and personnel updates.
Okay. Just going to give some general and quick updates here from the HR department and personnel. I, along with Mrs. Julie Vielko, our Latchkey director, attended the Riverside Student Job Fair, which was this past Friday. We had over 10 students interested in our Latchkey summer positions and our technology openings for summertime. I believe we also got one applicant for next school year's custodial openings. So we had some good turnout there, and I know community feedback has been the same. It was a nice experience, I think, for employers and for our students. That was for 11th and 12th graders. We touched a little bit on the volunteer process several meetings ago. It's something that we put in place last fall. So it just kind of solidifies the security of the volunteers that we have coming into the schools. These are our parents, grandparents, anyone that is in our classrooms, working with our students, possibly for events, going on field trips. So there's a acknowledgement form that they sign. They kind of have a agreement and understanding with the school what our policies are, that they're following those. They're also being background checked. So since we started the process, we now have over 200 volunteers on our roster. The majority of those have come since January. So we've been very, very busy with background checks in and out, but it's nice to know that we have the security, that extra added layer for people coming into our schools.
Are we paying for that?
We are.
Okay.
So it's part of our board policy that we do cover their background check fee. They're good each school year, so that group of 200 that came through the doors this spring, we'll re-engage with them next year so they can continue around the same time, but they're clear as they start the year as well.
So we pay for volunteers, but we don't pay for staff?
We do not pay for staff on their licensure, no.
And then just moving on for the board agenda, we did receive 2 additional teacher retirements. They were ones that we kind of had known about. They were wrapping up some other items as they prepare for their retirement. So 2 teachers at Lamouth will be leaving us at the end of the school year. We also are hiring on the agenda for a lot of our summer programs. You'll see Summer ESY, that's Mrs. Lanning's, the extended school year program for special education. The majority of those hires are all of our current employees providing services. We also have a handful of service providers that will go on the contracted side. And Summer Latchkey Camp, I think last time we spoke, they were just getting ready for registration. The program, again, sold out, I'd say, within an hour across all 4 school buildings. Again, it's over 100 students that'll be at the camp, so we have about a dozen counselors and coordinators that will be on this agenda for hire. A lot of them are our current staff, returning latchkey workers or students, and again, at the job fair, I believe we're going to be bringing in some new current Riverside students. Yeah.
Could you explain that camp a little more? Do they go all to one location?
They do. So this year, they are going to be at Parkside Elementary. Typically, they're at Riverview. They have, the facilities there. They have a larger gym to be able to play in. They can go to the playground, and they run 3 field trips per week also. So our transportation are involved. 2 buses go with them there and back. Usually the bus drivers get engaged. They go into the parks. They, engage with the children as well, along with the counselors. So it's a good program.
What are the hours of that camp?
They run 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Full day?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
And then summer positions that we did recently put out, again, for our current staff. We have the summer custodial program running again. I run it as they're paid as substitute custodians. We give them a survey to fill out if they're interested, ask what buildings they would like to work at. Mr. Arlesic provides a list of what kind of work will be at each building should they be interested. This year we included the field house and the stadium. Field house, we would like top to bottom cleaning. The stadium, he wants the bleachers power wash. So that's some really fun outdoor work. The survey is, as I said, open to our current staff. We've exceeded the number. It's only been open, I'd say, maybe for 3 days. We already have more people interested than worked with us last year, and that's open until May 2nd. And then technology does the same. They hire current staff and or students here at Riverside that would like to join their team. They, as you probably can imagine, have a pretty big to-do list in the summer as well. Updating machines, cleaning and prepping machines, all the Chromebooks that the students are using. Last year they did a lot of work getting some Wi-Fi points in for our Vocera, our badges that we have, and extending Wi-Fi services. This year, I don't know that they have big projects going on. I think with construction, they're kind of planning that, and their typical updates for all of the Chromebooks. So they are getting some interest, students returning to help them. We do have a few staff members interested as well. But that is about what I
We
have.
have one other resignation on the way out of too.
Oh, we do.
High school
A
teacher.
teacher. Thank you. Yep, and we're still kind of reviewing staff numbers, what it looks like for next year through attrition and posting. We haven't posted any specific openings yet, but they'll be coming as they're needed.
Okay. Nothing else, okay.
All right, we'll roll into the board agenda review. As always, we have our monthly financial reports on here. A lot of special ed contracts are on here. We have one for ADA outreach services for next school year. It's a company we use for behavioral services. That's just a renewal for next year. We have our annual workers' compensation, group retrospective rating program approval that we do each year. So that's for calendar year 2026. There's a purchase order on here for Capstone Academy. That's through the ESC of Northeast Ohio. It's for the current fiscal year. It's a student that's been placed there. Contract for Rochford Therapy Services. That's our occupational therapy services company that we use. So that's coming up for the next school year. We also have TransFinder purchase order to approve. That's our annual transportation routing software. So that's on the agenda. There's a contract with LLA Therapy, which also provides physical therapy OT services. So that contract's on for next school year. There's an addendum for the ESC of Western Reserve for adaptive physical education program. That's for the current fiscal year. We originally contracted for 10 days and we're going to need 20 days this year, so that addendum's on here. Another one for ESC Western Reserve for Broadmoor services for PT there. Wasn't on a billing this year, but it's someone that we've used for years, and since we haven't been billed for it yet this year, we had to get on the agenda for approval. Then there's DeSantis on here. It's our custodial supplies company. It's just a $30,000 purchase order for summer cleaning supplies coming for the summer. We anticipate having the DCW Group Healthcare Consultant contract on the agenda. That will be there, that we've worked with the Health Insurance Committee to finalize. I think we're all on the same page, and that should be on this agenda to move forward. And then a couple then and now certificates, and then our on donations, we have some sheet metal that was donated to the district to the development program. Going through the next item on the agenda is to talk about some MOUs of RLEA. There's 3 of them that are currently in the works. I don't know, Chris, if you want to talk to them, but me to talk to them.
Yeah, we have 3 MOUs that are going to be on the agenda. The first is for union officer pay. They asked us to serve, I believe it's the fiscal agent for the union officer. It's a pretty standard transaction. It doesn't cost us anything to the district at all. It's just a way for them to keep their finances. I think Gary may be a little
Because
more.
each union officer gets paid by the union amount to be the union president and different officers, and typically in most school districts it runs through the district. Here historically it's been run separately, so RLEA is filing their own quarterly 941s, issuing their own W-2s every year, and it's a lot of administrative work, and they realize that pretty much every other district does it through the district, and so this MOU would say, hey, we'll do it for them, because for us it's just another pay processing. It's pretty quick and easy, but then they just reimburse us the cost of what they pay the union officer.
Okay, I have a question though.
Yeah.
Like, how does that subject that pay then to our benefits?
It's-
Like, is it, like,
It's
a union officer, I would think that's Social Security related, not,
they've been under Social Security when they're separate, but when under
Yes.
us, they go under STRS, and they have to reimburse us for the STRS portion, and it's allowable by law. So it's kind of spelled out in the MOU, what Ohio Revised Code section covers that. Dave McIntyre prepared all that for us. There'll be no cost.
They would reimburse for both halves?
Well, yes.
Like everything?
The whole bill.
Right.
I'm
The-
just gonna keep my mouth closed on that, I'm not a fan.
The second one is the rave coordinator position. This is coming out of a consolidation of an administrative position that we contract through the ESC of Western Reserve. We set up the rave program with a daily, the rave program is our occupational program for our special needs students. We had a daily kind of contracted employee through the ESC Western Reserve to kind of oversee some of the program to get it established. The program is very well established now. We don't necessarily need that, but some of those responsibilities, finding job sites, evaluating the job coaches, would fall to the coordinator. So this is an extra amount for the teacher there to kind of serve as a coordinator. We developed this in conjunction with the coordinator. She does an excellent job, and it's an overall cost savings to us, as well as really kind of empowers our people to work with us. So.
Yeah, I mean, we've been paying the ESC probably about $21,000 for this service, and this MOU would cut that by 75% or so. And it's work that the individual that's interested is already capable of doing. It's just a cost savings to us.
The third one is an adjustment to the early retirement incentive. Basically, as written in the contract, we have an early retirement incentive for employees that is for those who reach, and specifically states 34 years. STRS adjusted that to 33 years this year, that this retirement clause impacts that as well. There's also some language in there that is not open to anyone. It is just open to those members or employees who have worked for 10 years or more in the district.
Can you explain that?
Why would we?
10 year, like,
So 10 total, so we have a second clause that states that if you retire with 25 years of service, if you choose teaching late, if you have 25 years of service and retire, and choose to retire under that benefit, you have to have 10 years of service in the district to take that as well. This one kind of moves that clause up to if you just retire at 33 years, you have to have 10 years of service in the district to qualify for this as well. We are still working out some of the details with that, but that is so if we were to hire somebody who needed for a short period of time, and they happen to be more advanced later in their career, and then they decide, hey, I'm going to retire now at 33 years. They don't. That's not the point of the incentive. The incentive isn't to hire people, and those would be some of our more experienced positions that are harder to find. The incentive is not to bring people here to fill a need, but then incentivize them to leave. It's more of an incentive that as you've done your service and.
so the 10 years is not just for people who are here just 10 years, it's like you have to have a
You have to
lengthier
have, yeah,
amount of
it's
service.
so in order to qualify for this incentive to retire, in order to qualify for this early retirement incentive, you have to serve in the district for 10 years and meet a minimum retirement requirement. So it's not just anyone who's been here for 10 years, and if you have 10 years and then just decide to resign.
And that is, it's 40% of.
It is 40% of their.
But you have to retire the first year you're eligible,
The
is that
first time
correct?
you're eligible, we are also working to try to get it in eligibility, for eligibility to count across all three unions, because they are all three retirement service providers, SCRS and PERS. Those typically carry over 1-to-1. So as soon as they hit that in a combination of all those, working on what that language looks like.
And so do we only offer this to our certified staff?
It's all of our certified staff, yes.
Do we, are we considering offering it to all staff?
Not at this point.
Is there a reason why we don't do that?
I think part of.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
in all fairness, like to people who have been here for a really long time.
I think that is, part of that is a lot of our classified staff who have hit that. If they were to go, we would be able to run some of our services all at one time, and keeping them is a critical importance, regardless of where they're at on the salary schedule. Whereas our teachers, they tend to, and our certified staff, when they get up there, we can usually replace them and realize a cost savings. So availability of labor, I think, is a portion of it.
All right, next two items on the agenda are requests from the Technology Department for a Chromebook purchase and generator purchase. We'll be going with a PI forecast here in a little bit. I included those in the forecast. We were originally going to wait till July 1st to purchase Chromebooks, but with all the tariffs and availability issues that are occurring right now, and with the timeline of getting those and getting them ready for next school year, waiting until July isn't exactly very practical because they have to get them shipped in, and then it's 750 Chromebooks that have to get set up and ready to go. So we're looking at possibly moving forward sooner with those. The other item is generator purchase. So in the basement here, we have what's called UPS, uninterruptible power supply for our servers. So if the power goes out, it provides enough time for the servers to shut down properly. That system no longer works, it's gone bad. And we want, technology is looking at putting an actual gas generator so we can continuously run those systems if we were to lose power here, which does happen on a regular basis. The campus is the hub of the district, so if the campus loses power and the servers go down, all of our schools lose internet, phone, and all those capabilities. So having a generator here is
Will it be an internally powered natural gas, or is it gasoline
I
powered
think it's
outside?
natural, it's natural gas.
So it'll be wired in.
It'll be hardwired in, yes.
Yeah.
It'll automatic switch over.
Okay.
Now, will that just serve the technology end of things or the whole campus?
it would just be the technology piece of it.
So it's just for that portion? And on these Chromebooks, I know we get Chromebooks every year. What kind of life do we get out of a Chromebook?
Typically 5 to 6 years. We buy
The
them for.
replacement cycle is 2nd grade and 7th grade, I think.
This
Or is it
year?
1st grade and 7th grade? It's 1st and 7th grade. 1st and 7th?
I
It's 6
don't
years.
know.
I
have
believe
not
it's a
been
6-year
involved in
cycle.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Been a lot of
they're,
years.
so at what level do they first get a Chromebook?
So there's a classroom set in kindergarten, and then we start to divvy to truly be one-to-one in 1st grade, and it's 1st grade all the way up through 7th. They have their one Chromebook. They don't necessarily take them home in 1st and 2nd, but they'll start to take them home after that. And then in 7th grade, they get a new one. And Chromebooks will actually, Google stops supporting them after a certain number of years, and they change, but it's 6 is usually, it's always a safe number. When you get past 6, then they stop to be supported. And when you stop supporting them, it's with all of the net security updates, those sorts of things, to deal with the latest,
But that's not what these are.
No,
That-
these are
These are-
Chromebooks so that they keep supporting.
These
So
are-
This is not classroom sets.
no, these are one-to-one cycles for 1st and 7th grade for this year's 1st graders and 7th graders.
That's what this is.
So they are 600 Chromebooks.
750.
750.
They buy 2 class sets and some
Yeah.
replacements because some of them get lost or damaged. And
And
they have to replace all
they
those.
buy extras on the way, so when a student who is in that grade level, if they completely damage their Chromebook or somebody moves in, they get that same Chromebook.
Okay.
So
So this is our standard,
These are
This is
standard.
our
this is our standard purchase.
This is our standard annual
Okay.
purchase.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand that. So does that Chromebook stay with the student through 7th grade?
The
Yes.
student keeps
So-
it through 7th grade, and then the 7th graders keep theirs through their senior year, and then they turn them back in their.
They give them back over the summer, don't they?
No.
They don't
We don't,
anymore?
we
them
logistically, we
over
can't
the-
do it.
They keep
We
them over
used
the
to,
summer.
didn't
We
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 did.
tried that,
Yeah.
it was a nightmare.
It's,
Yeah, I
so
know,
they
picking
keep their
them up,
Chromebook
right.
and charger at home in a space, and then they bring them back, and typically they have to, the week before school, they gotta go find it and
Right.
uncover it and make sure that it's not damaged, and
Okay, so that's kind of like each student has their own personnel Chromebook
Yes.
for 5 or 6 years, and then they get another one.
yep, and then they get another one.
We don't buy the insurance on those anymore, do we, either?
No,
We
they
stopped the insurance.
No, we
Yes.
do.
That was.
Yeah.
Because we do it in-house.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a
We do
nightmare.
in-house repairs.
Well, Yeah, I know.
We've looked into offering insurance for students, and it gets a little bit,
No,
if-
you gotta send them back.
if we're self-insured, or even if we went with a self-insured program, to put that up to what it would look like, I think is a challenge as to what the cost is, and you can't mandate it.
Do we provide the cover
It's
also?
It's not, we do provide the case.
And that's not included in this? Those
I
are
believe-
expensive too.
No, I don't think we do cases anymore.
We do cases.
We do? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So how much is one Chromebook?
$250, $255, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And because in the past, we used to do the insurance, we used to call them pizza boxes, little pizza
Right.
boxes.
Yeah.
Then because I was right across the hall from Melissa's office, used to be the mail room, and the FedEx guy would come in to be a cart with 100 boxes on it, and he'd be all angry that, all these boxes to try to get outside, and I'm like, this isn't your job to do that.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Health insurance update. The last board meeting, we approved the termination of Lake County Schools Council. I provided that notice on Tuesday morning. It was a little bit of contentious meeting when I provided that, but we provided the proper notice, and with the contract for DCW finalized, they already have started working in anticipation of that contract being approved. So Tuesday, we met with the unions just to kind of do an introductory and kind of explain. DCW was there, they explained what they do and what they have to offer, and kind of just have an introductory meeting, not really getting into the weeds of everything, more just introduction. And we have additional meetings set up in May to continue those discussions as we work through what our health insurance looks like going
Will
forward.
we be involving the union in those meetings, or like, so they get the knowledge firsthand instead of having to listen to it from administration?
Yeah.
DCW's recommendation is work directly on a committee with the unions.
With
So
them
we are
at the
doing that
table.
with union leadership.
Okay.
They're in two different spots. RLEA is under contract for a few years. OPSI is not, so it looks a little bit different from.
But it's always just a little bit
There's
contentious
different-
when they have to get the information from the administration when they haven't heard it firsthand. It's
Our-
just better to hear it
yes,
firsthand.
Yeah,
Our goal out of
Okay.
this and with working with DCW is truly collaborative and a collaborative approach, and to set up plans that, and everyone has the same goal, to set up plans
Right.
that are
Beneficial to everybody.
better, if not same or better coverage for less money.
Okay. Good deal.
And Nick, I think it was good that you sent out that notice to let people know last week about that health insurance changeover, when we voted to leave the district or the consortium. I think that was a helpful communication to
Well, it's
everybody.
probably necessary because we had a board communication that went out and informed people of the fact that we eliminated it before we actually had the conversation with the staff, and I think that was a little bit inappropriate. These are all the same, correct?
Yeah, we were working on that communication during the week. I was in Columbus, and I think you were out one of the days too,
Yeah,
so we didn't get it out
It was a pretty hectic week last week.
as soon as we wanted to, but, people saw the board agenda, and we're, even on Tuesday, we're starting to ask questions,
And the unions were aware to answer some of those questions too, so we had kept them abreast along the way. So,
That's why I'm just saying it was helpful that you did that, that's all.
Can we look at both of them together, or no?
this is a little bit separate. I want to talk about this first. So this is the November forecast, so not really paying attention to the numbers or what the forecast says, as our tax collections came in higher. I'm still working on that forecast, but I only wanted to pass it out because, so with the new state budget, well, that's being proposed, one of the proposals right now under the House was a limitation on school district cash balances of 30% of the prior year expenditures, which is, I'm gonna say, it's such a bad idea and
Right.
misinformed of how our cash flows work, because we're looking at year-end balances.
it's paralyzing.
And it would basically paralyze every district in the state. Each district has their own unique cash needs, and an arbitrary 30% limit is not good, especially when you're looking at a cash balance at the end of a fiscal year, and you're gonna adjust property taxes based on that mid-year cash balance, when property taxes are worked on a calendar year basis. So if you're gonna reduce a tax rate to get down someone's cash balance, you're actually gonna undercut the following year because half of that fiscal year would also be subjected to that lower tax collection. Then turn around and re-increase that tax rate in the future.
But
That's
you've already
been
lost,
voted on
but you've
by-
already lost the money. It's
Right.
ridiculous, and at the end of it,
And at the end of the
Right.
day, it's really gonna cost the taxpayers more money by this proposal because districts will lose interest income and go on the ballot even more frequently because we need to run operations. But then when you pass a new levy, it's gonna be trimmed back down again because how the levy cycle works, typically you have a higher cash balance when you first pass the levy and it trickles down because revenues tend to stay flat as expenditures tend to rise. The
right,
reason I
the
pass on.
levy cycle is you collect more money at the beginning
Right,
to see you through.
and then you dip into
At the
cash
end.
at the end to try to level things out.
Right, it's ridiculous.
So the reason I passed out this forecast is the simulations that were put out by the House, they're looking at the cash balance line at the bottom. I think it's 7.02 that they're looking at. We include the Lake County School Financing District in our forecast. It's a separate fund from the general fund. It's been historical past practice of the district to do that because we're using it for teacher salaries.
No other district does that, do they?
No other district does it. It's not required to be in the forecast. Technically, it's not supposed to be in the forecast in the first place, but because the logic was, this is prior house here, the logic was it's teacher salaries, it's pretty much an extension of the general fund. It makes sense to include it in the general fund. I am recommending we restate our forecast for May, take that out because it really shouldn't be in there in the first place. And on the back end of things, it does cause some reconciling issues on my end and some issues with the forecasting models in the first place. That would effectively take out that cash balance that's in that fund. That's not supposed to be in there in the first place.
It would be a zero. I mean, like that fund would be zero because we get it in and we use it.
We've built up a little bit of cash balance over the years in that fund. We used to spend it down to zero, but with when we renegotiated the financing district revenue and stuff like that, we started to build up a cash balance. And so there's about $2 million in there that's in that at the end of last fiscal year. We started charging benefits to that fund. In the past, we have not charged benefits. That was our way of kind of reversing that back down. So to take it out of the forecast, on the revenue side, line 1.06, all the revenues, that line would be reduced by, well, in last fiscal year, I think it was about $3 million. Prior to that would be somewhat close to that number. And then the personnel services and employee benefits, those numbers will be adjusted accordingly to what was actually charged to the general fund, which is the only fund that's supposed to be in the forecast. The only other fund that should be in the forecast is a Fund 16 for emergency levy. Some districts put their emergency levy revenue in a separate fund per the USAS manual. A lot of districts don't. We don't do that. It would basically make our reporting more accurate, and it would make it more, we wouldn't have that artificially inflated expenditures and cash balance in our forecast that technically should not be in there. The other districts in the financing district, Perry, Madison, and Hazel, do not include the financing district in their
We didn't
forecast.
used to include it either. When we first got it, we didn't include it, then we included it, then we didn't include it, and then we included it, and now it's been in there ever since. Like, we've gone back and forth through multiple iterations of different treasurers
Yeah, yeah.
and different philosophies on how we did it. The only thing I don't like about taking stuff out, and I get it, like, I absolutely understand why we need to do it. We never really have an accurate picture of what the finances of the district are when you include federal, like all the money that we spend and all the money that we get in and all the money that it costs to run this district is probably 20% higher than what's on here, right? When you add in all the other funds that we actually collect money on. And I think it's like, it is such an anomaly. It gives people a false sense of what it is that it costs to run a district, because there are all these other funds, but the only thing we have to report on is the general fund, right? Like,
Right.
it's wacky, it's gotta be the least transparent thing ever, right? I don't know, like, I mean, we have to do what we have to do in order to make sure that that doesn't affect that. How confident are we that that's even gonna stay there? Like,
I would really hope it does not.
I would think that that's gonna be one of the things that people are gonna be pushing back really
They
hard
are,
on.
people are pushing back on it, but what I'm hearing is that they're going to do something with, property taxes, and this is their version of something with property taxes.
Right.
If it stays at 30, I don't believe it'll stay at 30, but I'm hearing they're going to put a number, they are going to have a number on it.
Is it just for schools?
Yep.
Yes.
It's just for schools, right, so property taxes, they're gonna hit just schools.
I mean, the county's building a $200 million jail.
Right,
without going to
well, and the
taxpayers.
state
Well,
has a
They have excess cash to do that.
$3.9 billion rainy day fund, but you know, like, they don't have to do it, and they don't get their funds like capped, but we're gonna get our funds capped. It's ridiculous, and it's here, right, because legislators keep saying we have to do something about property taxes, and so school districts will be the ones who have to bear the
What-
brunt of.
What I'm hearing is the Senate knows what they are going to do. They're playing it very
I'm
close
sure.
to the vest, but they're going to have some surprises, I think is a fair word to say, which is not good when you're talking budgets. But they're gonna, so I do believe that it will stay. I believe that it may be, I think in talking with members of the Alliance, which we belong to, which is kind of our lobbyists, they believe there's going to be a number in there. Their concern is to give them a number, because then they'll just be like, okay, good. And that the average carryover across the state is about 50%. 49, I think, is what Tony Baggio said the average is. There are some districts who are really gonna get hit hard by this because they don't necessarily have another fund. Fairport is a great example. They're building a new school. They actually have a large cash balance for the first time, over 80%, and they're truly concerned because that is the construction monies that they kind of have in the general fund.
Wouldn't that be encumbered?
I don't know if
I think they're looking at cash balance before encumbrances.
it's, yes.
That's
So they are, so
stupid.
Fairport was reported as 89%, and that's to pay for the building when it's done. So it is a significant concern for all Lake County districts. And then there are even districts who have just passed levies and are just collecting on levies. And these levies passed 90%, 10%. Like they
So,
are.
right, so we have
and they're gonna
accounts
get-
payable, but like, who cares about those? Cause, you know,
That is. that-
like, I just can't, it's lunacy. I'm just gonna keep saying it over and over and over. It is the most dumbest thing I have ever heard as somebody who does budgeting for a living. Like, this is stupid.
It's scary. I would go with kind of, because the
I
other
get
part.
really incensed about it, I do.
The other part with levies really comes to, every time you're up for a levy, now that there's new auditor state guidance, what we can say to an operating levy is, we need this, but we can't necessarily, but, you know, Mr. Blacko and I can't go out and really trump for it unless we're on vacation to do that, and then, you know, those are, it's a very
So
scary
I need
process.
this year, and then next year, when I have money left over, because I needed it to like get myself through the 5-year forecast, which we're required to submit,
It's only
they'll
three
give it
now.
back to you, and then I'm gonna have to ask you for more, because I'm not gonna have enough, and then they're gonna give it back, and the requirement is that we have to submit a 5-year forecast to the county, because that was in there 5 years, but yet they're gonna take it down to 3 years for the state level, because they know they don't want you to have to go through two biennium budgets. So let's just be contradictory. The whole thing is like ridiculous. They say one thing, and then they say something else over here, and you're like, okay, make up your flippin' minds.
Well, and I think too, we are a district who, we get a lot out of our levy cycles and really
Right.
stretch them as far as we can, and we hear a lot when we were on the ballot, you know, you need to continue to stretch and show me how you've done more with what you have, and we'll be on every 2-3 years.
Like everything else, I'm gonna say it here, like everything else, you get penalized for doing the right thing,
And
everywhere.
the other one that I found out is interesting is we had talked, one board meeting about using other methods of financing, not necessarily property tax, but using an earned income tax.
And
that-
everybody's gonna
that
go
keeps
to
our-
it, because now,
That keeps it, if we still have that as over our, whatever the percentage is, so if we carry a cash balance of higher than, right now, the way that it's written, a cash balance of higher than 30%, and that's coming from an earned income tax, that money still gets rebated in property tax relief. So the people who are
Even if you didn't collect it in
Even if you
property
did not
tax.
collect
So
it
if we
then.
had not one iota of property tax
You
at
would
all, and we're
still
funded
get-
strictly by
Still get-
that's, I swear to God, they like,
Yes. So, and it's,
it's so dumb.
and there are a lot of, I don't know what the number is, but in terms of who understands what their taxes are, there are a lot of people who just pay their mortgage. And in that escrow is property taxes, they're written right in there, so they don't actually see the tax bill, it goes to the escrow company. Or if they do, they don't pay as close attention to it as others, so I think that's a big, so you won't necessarily see the difference in a relief that you normally would. You see when you're net negative, because then you're mortgage.
Well, and
goes up.
sometimes the escrows, like, they're not exactly accurate either.
Exactly.
I just had a client this year whose escrow company didn't pay his taxes. Dude,
Whoops.
you owe your property taxes because it says you're delinquent. What? Yeah.
My bad.
Right.
And having an arbitrary across all school districts, districts are set up very differently. We're, heavily on property taxes because we don't get funding from the state. We have a permanent improvement fund that we use for capital improvements, where like our neighbors at Paintsville City is heavily state funded. They're getting 2 payments a month. And so they don't require as high of a cash balance because they're getting a continual revenue stream, where for us, you get to January, February time, you're getting pretty low in your cash balance, even though you know it's coming.
The property
It's-
tax relief is inequitable. There's that word throughout the state. People are getting different percentages of property tax relief as a result of this, and then school districts are disproportionately affected as a result.
If they're gonna implement a arbitrary cash balance carryover, should be for every public entity, not just for schools.
Right, it's just schools. So it's not any other, right. Right. So then we'll put the the president of the county commissioner board will be on the budget committee, because they'll get rid of the attorney who's on the budget committee, but they don't have to be subject to it neither.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so with all that being said, what happens in Columbus, and what happens here. So what I'd like to see, and if I could get with you, Gary, at some time, I look, through, your end of the month, all the checks that are written and stuff like that, and there's
Yeah.
a gazillion, like 78 pages of 50 on a page that you go through, and it's all very detailed, but it's in a format that's tough for me. So I'd like to get with you, and maybe we can go through a format that you can do for me. You still have to do what you have to do, but something that we can break it down to where I can understand it better, where the money goes and all of this stuff. So I'd like to set up a time to do that. And then also, along that same line, Mallory, that personnel stuff you gave me, I'd like to kind of reformat that in a way for me also, so we can do that. So maybe a half an hour sometime,
Okay.
we can go through that, and we'll work that out.
So technically speaking, if we took 30% of the balance that's on 6.01, it's approximately 16,000, maybe 17,000, depending on what year you're looking at. We'd have to give back almost $7 million at the end of 2025, right? I'm looking at 6.01. That's the line that they're going to take 30% of.
That's 5.05. 5.05, line remember.
Sorry, 5.0, you're right, 57, like, right,
Yeah,
so
so that's-
57 million
Right,
are
so,
our expenses. We can't carry over more than 3 months' worth of expenses.
correct.
Right, that's $16 million. Maybe a little more, because I was looking at 24.
Right. Which is gonna be over a calendar year basis, so it'll
Right.
affect 2 fiscal
So
years.
17 million, we'd be allowed to carry over $17 million versus what, 25? Is that what,
Mhm.
is that the line I'm looking at, 7.01?
Yes.
Right.
So what happens to that money difference? That just goes back to the taxpayer then?
Basically, they would adjust the tax rates for the following calendar year to give that money back. And then
The year after, as we're in
After
a
that,
deficit, they just
they
crank the
reject
taxes
that
back up.
So it'll be a
So-
one-time,
Right.
So
So
As-
the money
as-
that we need, we'd have to give back $14.6 million would be going back to property taxpayers. And then you don't have the beginning cash balance anymore because it's $14.6 million less, right? Because it carries to the next year. So instead of, that's just so dumb.
And then that would hinder your ability, like, for signing multi-year contracts with vendors, because you have to certify you have the funds available, so, or even with our teaching staff or classified staff, we would never be able to do a 3-year union contract anymore. Most likely it'd have to be 1-year or 2-year contracts. We'd have to do them and be negotiating pretty much every year or two, which would increase our legal expense and everything else,
Yeah.
and the time and effort that goes into that, and then less focusing on teaching.
And that is not something that people are aware of, but right, Gary's got to actually certify that the funds are available. If the funds aren't available, then we can't certify contracts. But that's part of his job as a legal requirement of what he does, and yeah. Okay.
Heading to our last agenda item, I have updated permanent improvement fund forecast.
I love it.
And then I'm gonna pass on, I didn't print one for everybody, but just the previous 10-year version that I did before. Let me pass out 3 here, so I have one in front of me, so one for Dennis and for Chris. So we
So
wanted.
which one is which?
So the one with color on it, the one with yellow, that's the updated forecast. So basically what I did here, I tried to make sure, I hope I didn't miss anything, and actually, anything that's changed from the last forecast is highlighted in yellow. So, to kind of go through what that looks like real quick, just so everyone's aware of what's changed. I've updated the revenue estimate, the revenue amount, so the property tax line, that is what we've actually received this year, which came in higher than anticipated. And I'm gonna look at that a little bit more, because it's actually higher than what was anticipated on the Schedule A from the county auditor. So that's actual amount. Interest projection right below it, that we'll probably come in very close to that, so I'm pretty comfortable with our revenue estimate for this year. I backed it back down going forward, just a little bit, just based on the county auditor estimates, and so I'm wondering if there was some delinquency collection this year, or something that factored in that little bit of spike, a little spiked higher than anticipated for this year. Updated the tax collection fees to actual now that we have our second tax settlement, so that's there. For repairs, you'll see a yellow line going through the 10 years of forecasted data. What I did there was, because the repairs in 2025 are much higher than historical, and I think it's more of how we code things in our office, whether they're truly repairs or capital projects. But so I took the average of the previous 2 years and forecasted it out going forward with a 3% increase each year. That's on the first page. On the back page, per the board resolution that was passed at the last board meeting, I took out the bus purchasing for next school year, so I removed that from the forecast. For high quality instructional materials, I reduced that in half. We had 250 in there, I reduced it to 125, because if you recall, the last purchase we did was supposed to be through grades 5. We actually purchased grade 6 as part of that, and I think that was around $250,000 for 4 grade levels. This is only for 2 more grade levels, so we assumed half the cost of the 4 grade levels. Originally we had 250 in there, which was probably a little too high, a little too conservative, unless Melissa's gonna buy a much more expensive program for 7th and 8th grade.
Fancy curriculum?
And then I added and then we had the math curriculum that was approved at the last meeting. About 20,000 of that would be charged to the permanent improvement fund for actual textbooks we're receiving. The rest would be general fund, because they're licensed type items. And then put the Chromebooks and the generator on there to show that on the forecast in the current fiscal year. I also added a line item that, because in the past, we've added up all the expenditures, and we had some projects listed at the bottom, so now I added a total of those 2 line items just to make it a little more clear, and added a surplus deficit line, kind of like how we do our 5-year forecast for the general fund. So you can actually see for that fiscal year, what's our revenues minus expenditures, so you can see, are we running a surplus or running a deficit? And then presenting our ending cash balance. Now, because of the way we have to certify contracts and everything, so the current year includes all current expenditures and encumbrances. Obviously, Riverview is not gonna be done by June 30th and paid for. That's gonna bleed into next year, so the cash balance will truly change, but we have to account for it now to show that we can certify contracts. So you'll see stuff in 25 will bump forward as we get to 26, but we have to show it now so we can show our cash balance where we project to be. And then the last thing I adjusted was the turf amount. Rich had gotten, I'll pass it out for you guys to have. Rich had gotten a budget estimate back in the fall. You know, it's between 600 and 650,000 for turf replacement. Then you factor in a couple years of inflation, and then we have the cell phone revenue in a separate fund. So we backed down the football turf from 800,000 to 600,000 because it shouldn't be that much money. And then if we do happen to get a sponsorship again, that will only be an improvement. But I think 600,000 was a little more reasonable estimate, unless we experience crazy inflation in the next few years, which would adjust everything in the forecast, not just the turf amount. So looking at that, you know, things are a little bit better than we originally shown in the last forecast, but at the same time, there's not a lot of wiggle room based on these current assumptions for other projects that may be needed. We are waiting on the guaranteed maximum price for Riverview and for the Career Tech Edition. Those are supposed to be, we'll have a better indication probably in the next 2 weeks of where those are coming in at. We should have those numbers in the first half of May. But they'll be able to tell us.
He sent an email, Roger sent an updated email, we'll have that in, I'll just copy it word for word in the board packet update.
So next month we'll have a better idea, because if things come in
Right myself.
over budget, then we will obviously have to address from there. If things come in on budget, you know, I originally projected the estimate plus 4% was what I'd done previously, so I kept those numbers the same.
So looking at this, if I'm looking at it correctly, the bottom line, ending cash balance, is all that we would, bless you, all that we would have left. And that's even inflated if you spend some of it, right? Like
It's a cumulative
It's
cash
cumulative. So if we have to spend some of it to do projects, say, we haven't even addressed anything at the high school, and all the, $100 million worth of needs. Well, we may be addressing some of those with some of these additions, but we're not addressing anything at the high school yet. And there's no capital projects on here. So for example, if we have to do a roof here at the high school, or if we have to do some of those kinds of things that we wouldn't consider repairs, but they're capital improvements, none of that's included here,
Correct.
right? So say, for example, in fiscal '27, we spent $500,000 on some capital project because we have, I don't know, something that happens, and we need to do it. Or we decide, hey, we've got to address some of these things because we haven't done that. And we've said, that's why we went out to Bioloski, got that assessment to figure out what it is that we need to do. We need to start addressing some of those. But if I spend $500,000, then I start my fiscal '28 with zero, right?
Right.
Like in anything that I would spend in excess of this in any one given year affects the following year to that effect, and then we would have to start taking those dollars out of general fund, because any fund we can't have negative funds in anything at the end of a fiscal year other than federal funds.
Right.
We're not allowed to be negative.
Right. You would have to make adjustments either within the permanent improvement fund of what we're spending on
Correct.
for technology or buses or vehicles and those things.
And as a result, if we have to take it out of the general fund, it would not be an advance, because I'm not advancing it, because I can't get it back. They would be permanent transfers, right? And I think that's been my whole thing all along, is that if you've got something that happens, I mean, we're affecting the beginning it's a trickle-down effect through all of these, because if what you take out of 1 year now leaves you with nothing at the beginning of the next year, which affects the bottom line of that year, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
You know, et cetera, et cetera. It's a trickle-down effect. It will affect every single year. So we address nothing, basically, right? We're not addressing anything else, and that's concerning. Right, and again, if we've got all these things happening, and which is why I think I asked, I would love to see it when you finally have the general fund done. Like, what's that gonna look like when we have cash restrictions and we're not allowed to carry over cash, and I have to make transfers because we have something that happens in my PI fund that we've gotta spend? What's that gonna make the general fund look like? And geez, now instead of having a levy that I would love to go back, you know, like we always say, how much do you want to go back if you're going to ask for a levy? Oh, let's keep it under 2, right? Like you say, those are general parameters. Like, I don't want to go over X millage. Okay, great. Well, what's that going to do to the millage that we're going to have to ask? It just keeps exponentially increasing because I haven't included those transfers on the general fund. So again, I want to make sure the public understands, as well as our board members understand, that there is no fund in this district can have a negative balance other than federal funds, because you know you're getting a reimbursement the following month or whatever when we ask for the reimbursements, because those are spend and reimburse. There is no other fund in this district that can do that. It's not allowed by law. So we have to have the dollars, and then when they start saying you can't include encumbrances in the general fund, that's like saying I don't have any accounts payable. I got the bill, I paid it today. Like, I don't know how we're supposed to do budgeting. I don't know how we're supposed to say, hey, there's other projects that are gonna have to get done. We know there's other stuff that's gonna have to get done. We haven't addressed 80% of the needs in that Bialowski report. We may be covering some of them, but getting kids out of trailers wasn't technically in the Bialowski report, right? That's not even one of their recommendations. So I could say we haven't even touched 90% of the stuff that's in that report. We still have to do it, and that's what we promised people in this community. We're going to look at that. That's why we did it. These are things that have to get done. It doesn't reconcile for me. Even though this still says, yeah, great, it has a positive number at the bottom. But
The question is, what's the adequate cash balance to have in the permanent improvement fund going forward? There also is, you know, the Buckeye Melridge assumption, $12 million financed over 25 years. That's a big assumption that
And
we don't have
can
the
I ask?
scope finalized and what that looks like.
Can
and
I
cost
ask you something? This surplus deficit,
That's
is
revenue.
that just revenue minus
minus
expenses?
expenses,
It does
yes.
not include, it doesn't include the cash balances, plus the beginning cash balance.
That's factored in the ending cash balance, but yeah, that's surplus
But
deficit.
that is just
that's
current
revenues
year.
minus expenditures, yeah.
Right.
Current year.
So that's my current year. If I have, so say for example, I have no cash balance at the end of 26. Because we had to spend $200,000 on something. Okay, I have no money left. So instead of 454 at the end of 27, I really only have 246,
Right.
right? And so on and so on. Like I don't have $737,000 at the end of fiscal 2031 because I may really only have 153. We're not allowing ourselves the ability to do any projects anywhere else. And we're financing ourselves into a hole, because then we're saying, oh, like, we'll just finance this school and I gotta take it out of current cash. I have to pay that. Can't not pay it. We're not addressing the needs of the Bialowski report. We're putting on an addition at a school instead of going back and saying, I don't know, maybe we should just be building a school and ask the taxpayers for a bond levy. And get that $800,000 off of her, allowing us to then take our PI funds and utilize them as necessary and as originally intended. Because when we went back to the voters and asked them to approve an increase to the PI levy when the other
2015.
Yeah, when that bond was expiring. And we went back and said, hey, let's increase the PI levy by a little bit so that we can get a little bit more money. We'll renew and add. Okay, fine. We didn't tell them that we were building a school with those dollars. We did not tell them that we were building additions. We said, we're going to fix and we're going to repair and we're going to, this is just required maintenance money. It's day-to-day activity money. We are cash strapping ourselves, and again, I am afraid of what happens when we say, well, because that fund can't be negative, can't be negative. So now I got to transfer. And that is how it works. You transfer money, and we would have to, as a board agenda item, do a transfer out of the general fund, permanent transfer. Right? Which then just affects this. Hand in
Anything
hand.
else, Gary?
That was all I had on the agenda.
Anybody have any other comments?
I do not.
Okay, then I guess we're done for the day. Thank you very much.
Will we have